Rest your heart in God.
Father God, in this quiet moment where the world feels larger than our courage and silence presses close, we come to you carrying the weight of empty rooms and unanswered thoughts, knowing you see the corners of our hearts that feel unseen by everyone else, knowing you speak gently into places where fear has been whispering too loudly, reminding us that we are not abandoned, not forgotten, not drifting alone through the dark, for you are with us even when we struggle to feel you, even when loneliness wraps around us like night air, and you steady us with a presence that does not shout but stays, breathing hope into tired lungs, strengthening hands that have trembled too long, lifting eyes that have learned to look down, promising help when strength feels spent, promising companionship that outlasts seasons and failures. And in this sacred stillness, we dare to believe that isolation does not get the final word, that you designed our hearts for connection, for mercy, for shared light. And if you can, let your heart lean toward this prayer with me right now as we rest in the truth that you walk beside us through every shadowed valley, holding us here without hurry, without judgment, without leaving. Lord Jesus, as we remain here in your presence, we feel the ache of longing that comes when voices fade and days stretch quietly before us, and you meet us not with distance but with closeness, reminding us that fear does not define us and loneliness does not own us, because your nearness is not dependent on crowds or certainty. It is steady and faithful even when our faith feels thin, and you whisper strength into weary souls, help into moments where we feel incapable, courage into hearts that have been bruised by absence, and you tell us again that you will never leave, never turn away, never grow tired of staying, even when our minds wander and our hearts doubt. And you teach us that isolation can slowly harden us, can convince us we must carry everything alone, yet you gently invite us back toward connection, toward shared burdens, toward the healing that happens when light is allowed in. And if it feels safe, allow yourself to exhale here and silently tell him what has been hurting you, trusting that he listens with patience and love, drawing nearer still as we linger together in this unfolding prayer, held by a presence that does not abandon. Holy God, in the quiet spaces where loneliness speaks the loudest, you step closer rather than pulling away, and you see the way solitude has wrapped itself around tender hearts, sometimes offering rest, but often breeding fear, confusion, and self-reliance that slowly disconnects us from wisdom and grace. And you remind us that we were never created to carry life alone, never designed to stumble without a hand to lift us, never meant to believe that asking for help is weakness. For you yourself declared that it is not good for us to be alone, and your words breathe dignity back into our need for one another, softening the walls we built to survive, loosening the grip of pride and pain that kept us hidden. And you promise strength that flows through us, not from us. Strength that rises when we admit our limits and allow your help to meet us there. And in this moment, if your soul is tired of pretending it is fine, gently open it to him and let this prayer become a doorway as we continue walking together through this sacred conversation, trusting that he is shaping comfort even now. Faithful Father, you see the hidden hours when the night feels endless and the mind replays every loss, every silence, every unanswered message, and you do not rush us through these moments but sit with us inside them, steady and unafraid of our questions, reminding us that we are never truly alone even when companionship feels distant, because your presence fills spaces no voice can reach, and you guard us against the quiet danger of pulling away too far, of believing we must endure without community, without shared hope, without the healing touch of another soul. And you gently turn our faces back toward connection, teaching us that two are better than one, that falling does not have to be final when help is near, that mercy often arrives through another human heart, and you ask us to trust again, slowly and carefully, knowing how much courage it takes after pain. And if it feels possible, let yourself imagine being held by both God and grace in this very moment, as we remain here together, breathing in reassurance and breathing out fear, carried forward by a love that stays present and attentive. Gentle Shepherd, you look upon those who feel forgotten and you do not turn away. You draw nearer, placing your care around fragile hearts that have been stretched thin by solitude. and you invite us to lay down the heavy armor we have worn to survive being alone, reminding us that anxiety was never meant to live inside us unchecked, that we are allowed to cast every worry into your faithful hands because you truly care, deeply and personally, about each sigh we release, each tear we hide, each fear we cannot name, and you steady us with the promise that we can endure, not by our own strength, but through the power you breathe into us moment by moment, teaching us that resilience is not isolation, but trust, not silence, but surrender. And in this sacred pause, if your heart feels overwhelmed, let it gently hand one burden to God right now, trusting that He receives it with tenderness, as we continue to rest together in the warmth of a presence that does not rush away or grow distant. Compassionate Lord, you walk with us through seasons where companionship feels scarce and the echo of our own thoughts becomes too familiar, and you do not shame us for the ways loneliness has shaped us, but you lovingly reshape what isolation tried to distort, reminding us that fear does not have authority here because you are with us, steadying our steps when uncertainty makes us hesitate, helping us when we feel unsure how to reach out again, strengthening us when weariness tempts us to withdraw, and you speak softly against the lie that we must manage life alone, inviting us back into the safety of shared life, shared tears, shared hope. For you know how deeply we need one another, and you know how healing begins when hearts open instead of hiding. And in this gentle moment, if your spirit longs for reassurance, quietly allow God to remind you that His presence surrounds you even now, as we remain together in this flowing prayer, carried forward by love that neither falters nor fades. Ever-present God, you remain close when days blur together and loneliness disguises itself as independence, and you see how isolation can slowly teach the heart to distrust hope, to lean inward instead of upward. Yet you do not condemn us for surviving the best way we knew how. You simply offer yourself again, reminding us that you are our God, our strength, our help, the one who upholds us when we feel unsteady and unsure of where to turn. And you reassure us that your companionship does not expire with time or circumstance, that even when human connection feels fragile or delayed, your faithfulness does not waver, and you gently awaken in us a desire for fellowship, not forced or hurried, but rooted in wisdom and care, knowing that healing often unfolds in community. And if your heart feels cautious, yet curious, allow yourself to whisper yes to God's closeness right now, as we continue moving together through this living prayer, wrapped in a presence that promises to remain. Loving Father, you understand the loneliness that lingers even in crowded places, the ache of feeling unseen while surrounded, and you meet us there with a tenderness that knows our names and stories, reminding us that you are not distant or distracted but intimately aware of every silent struggle we carry. And you gently call us out of the shadows where isolation convinces us we must be strong alone, showing us that true strength is found in leaning on you and allowing others to walk beside us, that wisdom grows when hearts stay open and teachable, and you patiently restore our trust when it has been eroded by disappointment, breathing courage back into places that learn to close off. And you promise again that you will help us, uphold us, and remain with us through every uncertain step. And if your heart feels like it has been carrying too much by itself, let it quietly rest against God's faithfulness right now, as we stay together in this gentle unfolding prayer, held by a love that refuses to let go. Gracious God, you notice the way loneliness can distort time, making minutes feel heavy and memories feel louder. And you enter those moments without hesitation, offering yourself as constant companionship when our own thoughts grow restless and unkind, reminding us that we are not abandoned to our inner storms, that you are present in every breath we take and every tear we fight to hide, and you gently correct the lie that withdrawing will protect us, showing us instead that isolation can quietly wound the soul and lead it away from sound judgment and shared wisdom. Yet, you do not scold us for this. You guide us back with patience, inviting us to remember that we were created for relationship, for mutual strength, for hands that lift one another when the ground feels unsteady, and you promise to be the steady one, even as we learn again how to walk alongside others. And if something inside you is longing to be seen and known, allow it to surface before God right now, trusting that He receives it with kindness as we remain together in this ongoing prayer, resting in a presence that understands and stays. Steadfast Lord, You remain with us in the long middle of the journey where answers have not yet arrived and companionship still feels distant. And You sit with us patiently as we learn how to trust Your promises over our emotions, reminding us again that You are with us always, not only at the beginning or the end, but in the quiet, ordinary moments where loneliness feels most real, and You strengthen us from the inside out, offering resilience when we feel fragile and hope when discouragement tries to settle in. And You gently show us that reaching out is not failure but faith, that allowing others to walk beside us is part of Your design for healing. And You calm our fears about being a burden or being misunderstood, covering us instead with reassurance and grace. And if you feel a small stirring of courage right now, let yourself lean into it and trust that God is guiding you step by step as we continue moving together through this prayer, held in a love that remains attentive and near. Patient Father, You know how loneliness can quietly shape our thoughts, convincing us that we must stay guarded, that vulnerability is risky, that silence is safer than hope. And You meet these beliefs with truth spoken softly, reminding us that You are not asking us to walk exposed and afraid, but accompanied and held. That You surround us with strength when we feel small, and with help when we feel unsure how to move forward. And You teach us that healing does not rush, but unfolds gently, often through connection that feels slow and imperfect. And You stay close as we relearn how to trust Your design for shared life, for lifting one another when we stumble, for receiving help without shame. And You promise that even when progress feels invisible, You are still working, still present, still faithful. And if your heart has been quietly longing for reassurance, let it settle into God's steady care right now as we remain together in this unbroken prayer, carried onward by love that does not abandon faithful companion. You draw near to those moments when loneliness feels like a heavy coat we cannot take off, when even hope feels tired, and You do not ask us to explain or perform or fix ourselves before You stay. You simply remain, reminding us that Your presence is not earned but given, constant and sure. And You breathe calm into anxious thoughts that have circled too long, offering peace that steadies the heart and clarity that gently restores sound judgment. And You protect us from the slow erosion that isolation can cause, guiding us back toward life shared, life supported, life held in community and grace. And You whisper that falling is not the end when love is near, that help is holy, that being seen is healing. And You promise again to strengthen us when we feel unable, to carry us when we feel spent. And if you sense even a faint desire to stop carrying everything alone, allow that desire to rise toward God right now as we continue together in this living prayer, wrapped in a closeness that does not fade or withdraw. Tender Lord, You see the quiet courage it takes to keep waking up when loneliness lingers and companionship feels just out of reach. And You honor that perseverance by staying close, reminding us that we are not weak for feeling alone but human and deeply loved. And You gently reframe our solitude, showing us that while isolation can wound, Your presence can transform even the loneliest places into ground where healing begins, where trust slowly grows again. And You steady us with promises that do not shift with mood or circumstance, promises that You will help us, uphold us, and remain beside us through every unseen battle. And You guide our hearts away from despair and toward wisdom, teaching us when to rest and when to reach out, when to sit quietly and when to step toward connection. And You walk with us patiently through this discernment, never forcing, never leaving. And if your heart feels worn but willing, let it quietly agree to be guided by God right now as we continue moving together through this prayer, sustained by a love that is gentle and enduring. Everlasting God, You remain attentive in the quiet aftermath of long prayers and long days, when loneliness no longer feels sharp but heavy and familiar. And You sit with us there, reminding us that familiarity does not mean permanence, that this season does not define our future or our worth. And you gently guard our hearts from believing that distance from others is safety, teaching us instead that wisdom grows when we stay open to love, correction, and shared strength. And you speak life into places that felt stalled, courage into hearts that feared reaching out again, and patience into souls learning to trust your timing. And you continue to affirm that you are with us always, not watching from afar but walking closely, sustaining us with unseen strength. And if your spirit is craving steady companionship right now, allow it to acknowledge God's nearness in this moment, as we stay together in this flowing prayer, held within a presence that remains constant and kind. Holy Presence, you walk beside us through the unnoticed hours when loneliness feels woven into routine, when the ache is no longer dramatic but quietly persistent. And you do not overlook these moments. You fill them with steady faithfulness, reminding us that we are held even when nothing seems to change, that your care is active even when it feels silent, and you gently protect our hearts from hardening, from choosing distance over discernment, from mistaking isolation for peace, teaching us instead that connection is part of your healing design, that shared life restores perspective and renews joy, and you strengthen us to keep showing up to our own lives with honesty and hope, breathing endurance into spirits that feel thin. And you assure us again that we can do what feels impossible because your strength is working within us. And if your heart feels quietly exhausted right now, let it rest for a moment in God's sustaining presence as we remain together in this prayer that continues to unfold without hurry, guided by love that stays near. Merciful Father, you remain near as loneliness begins to question our value and whisper that we have been overlooked. And you answer those whispers with truth spoken softly, reminding us that our worth was never measured by company or absence but sealed by your love that does not fluctuate. And you stay present as we wrestle with the fear of reaching out, the fatigue of trying again, the quiet grief of connections that faded. And you do not minimize this pain. You honor it by carrying it with us, guiding our hearts away from self-protection that isolates and toward wisdom that invites life back in. And you show us that even now you are strengthening us, helping us, preparing moments of grace we cannot yet see. And you encourage us to keep our hearts open even when it feels risky. And if your soul feels fragile yet hopeful in this moment, gently allow God to hold that tension with you right now as we remain together in this prayer, continuing forward under the care of a love that does not abandon. Faithful Redeemer, you stay with us as this prayer deepens and our hearts grow quieter, and you notice how loneliness can soften us as much as it can strain us, revealing our need for connection, for mercy, for shared strength, and you meet that need without hesitation, reminding us again that you have never stepped away, never turned your face, never loosened your hold on our lives, even when we felt far from everyone else. And you gently prepare us for restored fellowship, shaping us with patience, humility, and compassion, so that when connection comes, we can both receive and give with grace. And you calm our fears about being too much or not enough, covering us instead with assurance that your strength is already at work within us, enabling us to stand, to hope, to endure. And if your heart is sensing a quiet readiness for renewal, allow it to lean into God's promise right now, as we remain together on the threshold of blessing, still held by a presence that has not left us for a moment. Steady Savior, you remain with us as the prayer stretches onward, and in this near silence you gather the fragments loneliness scattered, weaving them back into a story held by grace, reminding us that even when our paths felt solitary, you were walking every step, guarding our hearts from despair, and teaching us to listen for your quiet guidance. And you soothe the places where isolation taught us to doubt our belonging, replacing that ache with the assurance that we are known and wanted. And you encourage us to keep our hearts open to fellowship without fear, to wisdom without resistance, to love without conditions, because you are shaping us for shared life even now, and you strengthen us to stand when weariness returns, to hope when waiting feels long, to trust that your help is not delayed but perfectly timed. And if your spirit senses a gentle invitation to trust again, let it softly answer yes within you right now. as we remain together in this continuous prayer, suspended in a love that is still unfolding and not yet finished. Beloved God, as we arrive here without rushing past the journey, you are still with us, closer than breath, faithful to every promise spoken over lonely hearts. And you gather all that has been carried through this prayer, the quiet fears, the longing for connection, the hope that dared to stay alive, and you hold it gently, reminding us one last time that we are never alone, not now, not later, not ever, for you remain until the very end and beyond it. And you continue to strengthen us, to help us, to place people and grace and light in our paths in ways we may not yet see, and you soften our hearts toward fellowship, toward wisdom, toward love that lifts us when we fall. And before this moment passes, if you desire peace to settle deep within you, allow yourself to receive it now, and may the Lord bless you and keep you. May His presence rest upon you in every quiet room and crowded place. May His comfort surround you when loneliness returns. May His strength rise within you when you feel weak. And may you walk forward held, seen, and deeply loved, now and always. If this prayer spoke to your heart, stay with us. Like this video so that more weary people can find rest. Subscribe to the channel to receive new prayers every day, and write in the comments the name or situation for which you would like prayer. We will be reading, praying, and walking with you. May you never feel alone. God is with you, and so are we. And